I think what you see, first of all, is that what Jude's referring to, of course, is our relationship with the European Union. I certainly believe that when it comes to looking at our trade relationship with non-EU countries, we can do far better over the long term outside the European Union. What we want to do with the European Union is to have as close as possible a deal, to have the best trading relationship that we can, but not one that stymies us with the growth economies around the world. Remember, the EU is declining year on year as a share of world GDP. So the EU 27 are currently the second biggest economic bloc in the world, and by 2050 that will have dropped to the fourth biggest. So it depends on the
economy, because we know that the Treasury forecast says, every Treasury forecast so far has said that the North East will be 16% worse off after Brexit. Jonathan Arnott, you dispute that, I think, don't you? Tell me why.
Right. So first of all, that is an absolute worst case scenario. Secondly, it is a measure of GDP, not GDP per capita. So, for example, the population would be drastically different between the two models, and that accounts for a substantial portion of that difference. It is based on economic models that have already been shown to be wildly accurate. So those same Treasury predictions suggested that by now we would already have lost between 500,000 and 820,000 jobs. Actually, we've got a record number of people in work in this country, and of course those economic models are failing to take into account a lot of anticipated changes in EU policy that are going to cause issues for the UK and the North East. We've got modelling techniques that just don't consider any added value from Brexit. Well, the Treasury have a proven track record of getting it wrong, because 2 years ago they predicted absolute doom and gloom would have happened by now, and actually we've got completely reversed. They said 500,000 to 820,000 jobs would have been lost by now. When someone's been proven wrong once, do you then suddenly believe that it's going to be completely different immediately again?
And what about the replacement funding? At the moment we get money, this region gets a lot of money, doesn't it, from the European Union, which will disappear. So where will that replacement funding come from? Jonathan Arnott.
Well, bottom line is this. The UK sends money across to the European Union, of which we get roughly half back.
Yeah, but how do we know the North East will get that same amount of money after we've left Brexit?
Well, that is exactly what Jude and I are here to do. You know, we're here to bat for our region and to push that. Now, I personally think we could spend that money ourselves in more efficient and more effective ways. I don't think the European Union always spends it in the right ways, and I think it doesn't always have the added value that it should have. But this is money that we currently already pay for twice over in our taxes.
But you admit there's no guarantee the North East would get the same amount of money from our government.
Well, remembering that the UK pays roughly twice as much as what we then get back. So you've got an awful lot of wriggle room before that. But look, you know, this is where Jude and I will be on the same side, I think, because we should be talking about making sure that the North East does get a fair deal.
Jude, right, you're listening to Labour MEP Jude Kirton-Darling. This is independent Jonathan Arnott. So what do you say to Jude Kirton-Darling?
Let's remember those forecasts were already proven to be wrong since 2016. Now we're being asked to believe that somehow they're going to be completely in the opposite direction. But actually, what I think we should be doing is looking at positives and looking at ways that people are actually trying to propose positive ways of doing something for the region. So, for example, look at the proposal by Ben Houchen, Tees Valley Mayor, for a free port in the Tees Valley, and that is something which has been supported by Jude's colleague Anna Turley from Labour. That is something which can get cross-party
and just
support.
Explain briefly what that means. What a free port is.
So basically, this is an economic zone that is a low-tax zone designed to help businesses. To make it easier for them to start up and to grow. And I just think that quite often is a better way of developing business. When you provide tax subsidies to help your small and medium businesses grow, this is something that's been supported by dozens of the most established businesses in Tees Valley as well. It helps new businesses, it helps established businesses, and it's actually something that we would be able to do an awful lot better post-Brexit. And I actually think we should be starting to talk about ways that you can get some added value out of Brexit. Okay. Not just can we replicate, can we photocopy what we've already got, but what's the added value as well?
So Jonathan Arnott, Mike Matthews, is saying we need to stay in the single market, and he's by no means alone in believing that, is he?
Well, he's saying there that we need to have a deal, and I certainly agree with that. The danger with staying in the single market is that if you look back to the Brexit referendum, I cannot think of a single major reason why people voted Brexit that would actually be delivered by staying in the single market. It's a situation in which people who voted the referendum to leave the European Union would not get any of the things that they voted to leave the European Union for. I just can't see. I can't see any consistency and logic there at all.
Let's do some of the questions that are coming in. Margaret in Darlington says, would you ask Jonathan Arnott to explain how we're going to have more bargaining clout outside the European Union? We're still talking to politicians about this, and they, if the truth be told, don't know any more about the EU than we do. No one seems to hear what the experts have to say. Nobody's listening to the experts.
I think, first of all, when you look at the European Union's approach to trade deals, it is incredibly slow. It frequently takes a decade or more to negotiate trade deals. Countries around the world, generally that are independent, are able to do it an awful lot quicker. You also find that within the EU 28, as it is now, that countries have to all negotiate to find the EU's negotiating position. So when you're negotiating your own negotiating position, it means that you've already made concessions before you start looking at the other side, and then that often means that there are various areas which are exempted from those trade deals for that reason. The European Parliament is also very, very keen on politicising trade, getting to situations where the European Union has a trade deal negotiated dependent upon the country that it's negotiating with changing some of its domestic policies, and that makes it very, very difficult to negotiate good deals quickly. The UK is actually one of the world's biggest economies, and we do definitely have an awful lot of clout.
All right, well, Kath in Hartlepool agrees with you. Kath says she never wanted to join the common market in the 1970s. There's a big wide world out there to trade with, so why should we be beholden to the European Union? Peter in Middlesbrough says, can you ask your guess why we'll still be paying the European Union money 10 years after we've left? Jonathan Arnott, would you say don't give them a penny?
There are some, relatively small, but there are some legal obligations that the UK has. If the European Union want to effectively money towards the end of their current 7-year plan, what they call the multi-annual financial framework, in December 2020, the projects that we've sort of already signed up to, then that, to me, is going well beyond our legal obligations. And in so doing, my view is that if you're giving something that goes a long way beyond your legal obligations, then you should be expecting to get something pretty major back in return for that. And it seems to me that what Theresa May's done is she's conceded that and an awful lot more, which is going quite a long time into the future, without really getting anything tangible in return from the European Union for doing it. So I don't mind paying something, but I want to see that what we're paying has a return that comes with it. So if you talk about legal obligations, that's one thing. That's very legalistic, and it's a relatively small amount of money. And that's okay. If you talk about political and moral obligations, then at the same point, then you can then say, well, that's a two-way process, and actually the same applies on the EU side as well as on the UK.
You are listening to a debate about Brexit with two of our MEPs, Labour's Jude Kirton-Darling and Independent Jonathan Arnott. If you want to chip in, love to hear from you. 81333. Start your text message with the word Tees. We're doing this until 10 o'clock this morning. A rare opportunity, perhaps, to ask an MEP a question or ask them what they're doing for the next year. Redcar delivered one of the highest pro-leave votes. Community worker and boxing coach Frankie Whale says people there have got nothing to lose.
We're strong men, we're strong people, strong women. What we do is if we voted out, we voted out. Let's put our pants up, socks up, and let's get on with it, So it's a case of, you can all you can. It doesn't matter what side of the
Can't get any worse.
Well, can it get any worse? No. If you've got nothing, if you take that nothing away, what have you got? You've still got nothing.
But just to come back on a couple of things that that Jude mentioned, let's remember that the UK employment law is actually stronger than required by the EU on an awful lot of issues, and actually the UK legislated on many of them before the European Union did. Your caller from earlier who was absolutely right, not necessarily in some of the language, but absolutely right to say that the UK is a big customer of the European Union, that we do actually buy from them more than they buy from us. So yes, it is smaller as a proportion, but actually in raw terms, it is still an awful lot more, and it is a very important market for the European Union as well. What we should be trying to do is finding a positive deal, but I think where Jude and the Labour Party are on slightly different lines is that Jude is very much committing to staying in the single market. And just to use her divorce analogy from earlier, it's a little bit like saying that you're going to get divorced but still live in the same house. And I think if you don't get any of the things that people voted Brexit for, I think you'd have some very, very angry people at the end saying, well, we're still in the single market. Okay. What has actually changed? What will we actually achieve?
Can we just establish whether you think there will be a referendum on the final deal, by the way? Jonathan, you look at me in horror when I suggest that.
I suspect there won't be.
The
reason I suspect there won't be
briefly.
is I don't think everyone will be able to agree on what that would be. So, I mean, if you have a referendum on should there be a deal Brexit or a hard no deal Brexit, to say, well, okay, which of those should it be? You'd find one set of people supporting it. If some people try to turn back the clock and reverse Brexit by it, then you'll have another set of people supporting it. I think that's why it won't end up happening.
So the people may or may not get another say. However, MPs will. So MPs have got a dilemma. We know that most MPs want to remain, but most of their constituents, particularly in this part of the world, want to leave. So when they vote, should they vote with the people to keep their jobs or vote with their conscience?
How about they vote with their election manifestos? Because in the 2017 general election that we've had since the referendum, both the Conservatives and Labour supported that decision to leave, and people elected them on that basis.